going, everyone, and welcome back to Rangers Rundown. The Rangers have now played 10 games to start the season, and I want to do a 10-game breakdown. I want to do this every 10 games just as a kind of check-in on the team, see where they are struggling, see where they're succeeding, and talk about what needs to happen in the coming games and the next steps to see them get to the playoffs, because that's really the goal this year, is to see this team get into the playoffs, not necessarily win a cup, because I think it's pretty clear the Rangers aren't winning a cup this year, but to get into the playoffs and maybe even do a little damage. That's really the goal of this season. So through the first 10 games, let's figure out if we're on that track. So, first 10 games of the season. Started the season at Washington, which was, of course, that loss 1-5. Then they came home versus Dallas, and they lost in overtime 2-3. So the first two games of the season, not looking so great, starting 0-1-1. Then they go to Montreal, and they win 3-1, getting them to 1-1-1. And this is where we kind of thought, okay, the Rangers are winning games. They're not winning them in stunning blowout fashion, but they are winning games. They're getting points. They go on that 4-game road trip. Montreal, Toronto, Nashville, Ottawa. They sweep the trip. They get 4 wins in a row while not scoring that many goals. And that's been a theme throughout this first 10 games. The Rangers aren't scoring that many goals. And we'll get to team stats in a second. They come home versus Calgary, and they get bludgeoned again, 1-5. Then they play Columbus, and they play their most complete game of the season so far. They beat Columbus 4-0. Shesterkin gets the shutout. Then they are currently on their second road trip of the year. They played Seattle, where they won 3-1, and then they played Vancouver the other night, where they lost in overtime 2-3. They complete their road trip this weekend against Edmonton and Calgary, and then they come home against Florida. So through the first 10 games, the Rangers are 6-2-2, 14 points. That is nothing to turn your nose up at. I think most teams would be happy to be 6-2-2 in a 10-game stretch. 14 out of a possible 20 points, that's not bad. Their next 10 games. Now, these next 10 games are going to be really telling about who this team is, because you can say 10 games is a small sample size, and we can argue whether or not that's true. Let's say for the fact that 10 games is a small sample size. 20 games is not. 20 games is a quarter of a season. That is not a small sample size. So these next 10 games are really going to tell us what this team is and what they can do. And it's going to be interesting because this is kind of a brutal next 10 games. Not necessarily against opponents, but just in sheer number of games played. So if we take a look at their next 10 games, Edmonton, of course, tomorrow, and then Calgary on Saturday, then Florida on Monday. So there's 3 games in 4 nights to start these next 10 games against teams that are good. Calgary, Edmonton, and Florida, those are 3 of the top 6, 7 teams in the league. You have to hope that the Rangers come out of those 3 games 1-1-1. It's unrealistic to think the Rangers are going to win all 3 of those games. Now, could they? If Shesterkin stands on his freaking head all 3 of those games, the Rangers could win all 3. I don't think that's very likely. I'm hoping for 1-1-1 in those next 3 games. Win 1, lose 1 in overtime. Get 3 out of a possible 6 points and just kind of move on with the season, because that's a brutal 3 games in 4 nights. Then they get a little bit of a break, and then on the 13th, they're at Columbus. The next night, they play New Jersey, and then 2 nights later, they play Montreal. Again, 3 games in 4 nights. Now, they get a little bit of a break beforehand, but then they're right back into the thick of it. 3 games in 4 nights. Now, these 3 opponents are not as stellar. So it is possible the Rangers win all 3 of those games. I don't think it's likely, because 3 games in 4 nights is rough for any team. But again, maybe the Rangers win 2 out of 3. So now so far we're 3-2-1 or 3-1-2 for those 6. Okay, fine, we'll take it. Then they get a day off. They get another 3 games in 4 nights. Toronto, Ottawa, Buffalo. Again, Ottawa and Buffalo, the Rangers should be fine on paper, but You never know, because those are back-to-back nights, so Georgiev's playing one of those games. Toronto, we beat them before, but should we have? That's up for debate. And then they get a couple nights off and they play the Islanders on the 24th to round out the next 10 games. But the next 10 games, they have three games in 4 nights. 3 games in 4 nights, 3 games in 4 nights, 3 games in 4 nights. It's a brutal schedule for these next 10 games. They need to stay healthy, which for this season anyway is hard because it's condensed. These next 10 games are like a super condensed version of the schedule. And in these next 10 games, how many games is Georgiev going to play? You cannot ask Shesterkin to play back-to-back games 3 times in a row. You just can't. I think Georgiev is going to play 3 of these next 10 games. I think a total of 6 points for the Rangers are going to be up to Georgiev. That's scary for some Rangers fans. Some Rangers fans like Georgiev and they have confidence in him. Hey, he's won a game this year. He also lost a game really badly. It's also the first game of the season. Maybe we cut him a little slack. There's 6 points on the table right now for Georgiev to claim, and I really hope he claims them. But that's the next 10 games. It's going to be very telling. I'm excited and I'm nervous at the same time. Let's go over some player stats. Leading the team in points is Fox in 10 games. 2 goals, 9 assists for 11 points, and he is +5. So when he's on the ice, good things are usually happening. We're excited as Rangers fans when Fox is on the ice. Panarin in 10 games has 2 goals, 8 assists for 10 points, and he's a -5. Some people don't like the plus-minus stat. I think in short bursts it's telling. Over an entire season, maybe it loses a little bit of its luster. Make of that what you will. I'm not great at analyzing the plus-minus stat. -5 is not exactly where a player wants to be, but he's providing a lot of offense, so maybe we forgive him for that. Kreider in 10 games, 7 goals to lead the team by a lot, and 1 assist for 8 points, and he's +4. So again, Kreider, good things happening when he's on the ice. Zibanejad in 10 games, 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points, and he's a +6. So the top line for this team is doing what we hoped they would. Maybe we would like to see a couple more goals from Zibanejad, only 2 goals in the first 10 games. Not exactly what he was doing at the end of last season. You got to think he's going to find his stride at some point, though. Gaudreau in 10 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points, and he's a -1. He's not on this team to score goals. He's on this team to be a defensively sound forward, and we can have the argument of whether or not he is that player. He's a -1. Let's discuss it. I don't know. I don't know what to think of Gaudreau yet. I think we need to see more games from him. Lafreniere, 10 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points, and he's a 0. So would we like to see more goals from Lafreniere, see him take that next step? Of course. Hopefully that happens soon. We're going to need some of these players to step up and score goals over the next 10 games. Otherwise, 10 games from now, we could be talking about a Rangers record that is, 10-5-5? Like, it could drop off over these next 10 games. Strome, 6 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, a -2. Now, Strome is the guy that we love to laugh at because he fans on passes and he misses open nets and he trips over himself. When he's good, he's good. And when he's bad, it's just funny. I don't think anybody's mad at Strome. I think he's just one of those players that when he's on, he's on. And we're going to need him to be on over this next stretch. Blay, 9 games, no goals, but 3 assists, 3 points, and a +2. So he's doing well. I think he's doing about as well as anybody would have expected. Would we rather have Buchnevich on this team right now? I think most Rangers fans would rather have Buchnevich than Blay, but of course, this is the world we're in. We have Blay. Let's get used to him. He's doing well. Seems like a good player, so let's see what else he can do. Rooney, 10 games, 2 goals, no assists for 2 points, and he's a +2. Again, that fourth line, if they're generating offense, great. That any offense the fourth line generates is a bonus. So 2 goals from Rooney, hey, we'll take it. Lindgren, 10 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, and he's a +6. So he is a very solid defenseman. Blocks shots, gets in those passing lanes. He's rough. He hasn't bled as much as we thought he would in these first 10 games, but I'm sure that will come. Trouba, 10 games, no goals yet, but 2 assists for 2 points, and he is a 0. So Trouba on that second pairing, he's seen a couple more goals, but he's a very sound defenseman on this team. He's probably one of the leaders in the locker room as well. He is on the ice, definitely. You can see it every night. He puts his heart and his soul out there every game. Hedl, 10 games, 1 goal, no assists for 1 point, and he's a -2. Hedl has 1 goal and 1 point this year. Is the team banking on Hedl to be the playmaker and goal scorer of this team? No. Are we wishing he had more than 1 goal? Absolutely. He's on pace for a 9-goal season, which is just not going to cut it. Because are we grooming him to be the second-line center? Because if we are, his offense needs to be better. That's just it. Hunt, in 10 games, no goals, 1 assist for 1 point, and he's a +1. Again, that fourth line, any offense they generate is good news. Miller, in 10 games, no goals, 1 assist, 1 point. He's a -4. So between Miller and Trouba, he is obviously the weaker defenseman. He hasn't been in the league as long, but he does have that nice long reach. He gets into those passing lanes, and he does make those good plays. So he's just young. He has those shortcomings. He's still finding his game, fixing the holes. I'm not too worried about Miller. Lundqvist, in 7 games, no goals, 1 assist for 1 point, and he's a -2. Again, young kid, getting used to the ice. He was healthy scratch the last couple games. Nice to see him get that first NHL point. We'll see what else he can do down this stretch. The rest of the team has no points. And the only one I felt like putting on the board was Kakko. In 6 games, he has no points. No goals, no assists, and he's a -1. 6 games is a small sample size. But the caliber that we expect from Kakko, we expected at least 1 goal at this point. We're not going to overreact, but we are going to react. Kakko needs to play better offensively. And it's not for lack of trying. He's shooting. He's getting into the offense. He's just not getting rewarded for any of it. So he's one of the players that needs to break through, because if he has a weak season, that's not good for this team, because Kakko is a top 6 forward. And when you have a top 6 forward that's not producing, that handicaps your team. Nemeth, Reeves, McKegg, Tenorti, Gauthier, no points for any of them. They're all minuses except for Reeves, who's a 0. Bottom 6 forwards, bottom pair defensemen. Are you that incredibly worried? No. Would it be nice if they chipped in some offense? Of course, but again, it's only been 10 games. But let's talk about some team stats. So this team is 6-2-2 for 14 points through their first 10 games, landing them second in the Metropolitan Division. Only by a point. They're 1 point ahead of the Capitals and a few points behind the blistering hot Carolina Hurricanes, who are almost at a 10-game win streak to start the season. I don't think any fans in Carolina are complaining about anything. Their goals for, Rangers have scored 24 goals this year so far, which is 19th in the league, so below average. 24 goals over their first 10 games, not exactly what we expected from this team. Goals against, 22, so that lands them 9th. They're top 10 in goals against, and that's in large part to Georgiev stopping pretty much everything. The Rangers won a lot of their games in the first 10 with less than 4 goals, fewer than 4 goals. And letting in fewer than 4 goals through 8 of those 10 games. So 9th in goals against, that's pretty good. Hopefully that can continue. Shesterkin's got to keep playing nice and tall. So 2.4 goals per game for the Rangers. 2.4 goals per game is their average. That's 26th in the league. They are bottom of the barrel in goals for. That needs to go up. You cannot make the playoffs scoring fewer than 4 goals every single game. Sometimes you're going to have to score 4 more goals to win a game, and the Rangers need to be able to do that. They have the firepower to do that. We just haven't seen it yet, except for that Columbus game. Power play is 19.4%, which is 20th in the league. That has shown signs of getting better over this season, but we would like it to, get better from there. We know this team has a better power play than what they've produced over this first 10 games. 20th in the league, again, not that great. Penalty kill, however, 86.1%, which is 8th in the NHL. They are top 10 on the penalty kill, and that is probably the most obvious thing I'm going to say this whole video. The Rangers have a great penalty kill. Nothing really much to say about that. Shots per game played. The Rangers are generating 26.9 shots per game, which is 31st in the league. They are only better than one team in producing shots during a game. That is not good. That's part of the reason why they're not scoring that many goals, because they're not shooting. They need to shoot more, and that's going to lead to more goals. Shots against per game is 31.9, which is 20th, so not bad. They're not allowing many shots, which is good. They're just not shooting anything either. How many games have we watched where the Rangers are outshot for at least 2 periods and then they finally wake up? Like, the Rangers have been outshot more games than they've outshot their opponents, I'm sure. I don't know that for sure, but it seems like it's been that way. And then face-off, they've won 45.3% of the face-offs this year, which is 30th. Again, we've talked about how face-offs, do they really matter? We can have that debate. You win more faceoffs, you possess the puck more, but again, you have to do something with it. Now, the Rangers have won 6 of their first 10 games being awful at faceoffs. It's one of those stats. And they're not far off from 50%, but still, they're bottom of the league in faceoffs. They're one of the worst teams in faceoffs. So, first 10 games in the books. The offense has got to kick in at some point. You got to think one of 2 things is going to happen. The Rangers are going to wake up and they're going to revert back to their form from last year where they were scoring a lot of goals, or these players that are playing really well are going to regress to the mean, and then the Rangers are just it's going to be a slow descent to mediocrity. And if that's the season, I'm going to be really upset. So there we go. There's our first 10 games for the Rangers. We'll do this again towards the end of the month when they've played their second 10 games. I'll do this again. We'll talk again at another checkpoint. Hopefully the Rangers are still above 500 and fighting for a playoff spot. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more videos like it, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next rundown.